Sup. Oh, let's do this, friends. Let us do this. Let us do this. Let us do this. Let's get down to brass tacks. Your phone is being synced. Sync will be canceled. Yeah, you can. I don't care. Let's get down to brass tacks. Welcome, my friend Scott Ocker. Good to see you. Hey, good to see you. We're gonna get cranking here with what I learned this week, and then I'm gonna be back with Spaniard's weekly workouts for those of you who are interested in training. Might need some new ideas. Might need some new direction, some new examples, some reassurance, a reawakening, however you want to use it. But first and foremost, I'm going to record this week's What I Learned This Week. It's coming straight from the heart. I think my wife might come home pretty soon. She was on jury duty and they are out of jury duty. I think she might come home pretty soon. So may have somewhat of an interruption, but as we are recording, so be it. 1, 2, 3. Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode of The Spaniard Show. Welcome to another episode of What I Learned This Week. I feel like these are my favorite episodes to record. I don't know if it's simply because of the format of the episode or if it's because it's Friday, and I really like Fridays. But either way, I sincerely enjoy recording these episodes, and I appreciate you tuning in. It's really neat to look back and see what I did learn this week. Another neat thing that's in the haps right now is Dredd and I are working diligently. At this point, he's working diligently at creating a book outline, and I will soon begin writing my next book, which I'm really excited about. A quick reminder, I started doing something a little bit different. So these What I Learned This Week documents, normally I would email them out to my email list. And then it dawned on me, only a small percentage of people is actually signing on to that email list and getting these documents. And I truly believe these documents are gold. They will be the source. The supporting details of my book contain so much wisdom, so much knowledge, so much book knowledge, so much people knowledge, so much human spirit, really, passion, enthusiasm for life and living, that I started putting them on my website. So if you go to charliespaniard.com/blog, you're going to see this document and last week's document actually also at charliespaniard.com/blog if you'd like to read it. If you don't want to read it, that's fine. And I want to speak from the heart right now. I record pretty much every episode, every solo episode, which is the AMX's, the What I Learned This Week, and the occasional solo show that'll come out on Thursdays, as well as AMXKids. Anyway, pretty much everyone I record, I live stream on facebook.com/charliespaniard. And the reality of it is there's only like 2 or 3 people that sign into these lives. So thank you, Lauren. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Scott, for being here. But the truth is, it's so frustrating because you put so much work, right? And only a handful of people get to see it, or you think more people should watch it, or you think it should be bigger, etc., etc. But you know what? That's the truth of it. That's how it is. That's how it works. It's not easy. Nothing is ever easy. And in time, the goodness, the quality, the value of my show, it'll either rise to the top or it won't. And I'm fine with that. But one way or another, we're going to get to the truth. That ties in line very well with some of the readings that I did this week and that I'm going to talk about in this episode of What I Learned This Week, in line with Mr. Rogers, getting to the truth of it. So the reality, I would love for thousands of people to tune into my live streams. The truth of it is they don't. The reality of it is they don't. But I truly believe, because of the value of this show, forget this show, the value, the meaning, the power in lifelong learning, I truly believe that it will rise to the top. The cream will rise to the top. Just like in wrestling. More so wrestling than fighting, because a lot of time the cream doesn't rise to the top in fighting. The loudmouths rise to the top in fighting. But in wrestling, in a sport as pure as wrestling, the cream will rise to the top and the best will stand on that podium. Or it will be their fault that they don't stand on that podium. I'm fine with it either way. Let's dive into this week's What I Learned This Week. So I'm going to finish off The Dichotomy of Leadership by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin. I'm going to talk about Where the Red Fern Grows, which is the current book on AMXKids. I'm going to dive into the new book called The Good Neighbor, The Life and Work of Fred Rogers by one Maxwell King. And I'm going to talk about my interview with Rod Woodson, the Rod Woodson. If you're a Western PA or you're an NFL or you're a Steelers fan, and I'm going to throw in the Ravens fans, you know who Rod Woodson is. Probably the best cornerback in football, my friends, in the history of football. Let's dive in first to finishing off The Dichotomy of Leadership by Leif Babin. So regarding the most important place to point his weapon, and this is counterintuitive. This goes against what you would think. But this book, The Dichotomy of Leadership, speaks about leadership. And he's talking about the lesson. The lesson in this chapter is being detached but focused, right? Being focused but detached. Not being aloof. Aloof means you don't know what's going on anywhere. Focused but detached. Being able to see the situation as a whole. So Leif says, as the leader, I trained my weapon at high port. The weapon pointed to the sky. With my weapon at high port, I no longer look down the sights with tunnel vision. So as the leader, he's saying this. And think of this in your own life, wanting to attack a problem. Wanting to attack... Let's talk about a fist fight. Right? Let's talk about a fist fight. Well, in a fist fight, I'm coming at you because I got to fight you. But guess what? Sometimes that bites you in the butt. Sometimes if you go full bore straight at him, you're going to catch a shin by Anthony Johnson right to the chin. Sometimes you have to be a little bit more tactful. You have to take a step back. You have to observe what's going on, the ebb and the flow of the fist fight, the ebb and the flow of life, the ebb and the flow of whatever leadership battle, whatever challenge that you're undergoing. You have to take a step back so you can assess the situation. So you're not seeing tunnel vision. So you're not just, boom, stuck on that one thing. So you're able to see the forest for the trees. So step back from the fray and observe. Don't get lost in the details. Moving on to the Fred Rogers book, the Mr. Rogers book. And this is tremendous. And there's so much, I'm going to say right now, I mean, I'm in the book. So maybe I'll feel differently in the future. But I'm going to say right now, this is one of the most valuable books that I've ever read. The Good Neighbor, The Life and Work of Fred Rogers by Maxwell King. It's a tremendous book. There's so much value in this book for everyone, really. This is how I look at learning. I learned where Daniel Tiger came from. Not just the show Daniel Tiger, but the original Daniel Tiger puppet that was, I'm not going to tell you the story. You got to read it. You got to read it to learn it. But the history of that, and why is that important? Because my kids sit in front of the television, they watch Daniel Tiger, and it's a part of their life. And my son Rocky, who's 2, will go, Tiger, Daniel Tiger, Hood. He doesn't even say it right, but it's so precious. He said, Daniel Tiger, Hood. But knowing where that came from, a piece of my life, a piece of my children's life, knowing where that came from, to me, that's so valuable. That's so priceless. Because it touches my heart, it touches the hearts of my kids. So to be able to read where it came from is tremendous. But Mr. Rogers early in the book tells us this. When I was a boy and I would see scary things in the news, my mother would say to me, look for the helpers. You will always find people who are helping. To this day, I remember my mother's words, and I'm always comforted by realizing that there are still so many helpers, so many caring people in the world. So here's the deal. There's a lot of ugliness in the world. There's a lot of crap in the world. There's a lot of bleh in the world. And if that's what you're looking for, that's what you're going to find. That's why I don't watch the news. I don't watch the news because that's all it is. It's name-calling, finger-pointing, negativity, bad stuff. If that's what you're looking for, that's what you're going to find. But as Mr. Rogers tells us, as his mother told him, as I'm reminded by way of reading this book and reminding you by telling you what I read, his mother told him, look for the helpers. So I'm telling you, look for the helpers and then be the helper. How about that? How about you look for the helpers, i.e. you look for the good, and then you be the helpers, i.e. you be the good. It's a simple lesson, but a profound lesson. Moving on to Tuesday's episode of AMX Kids. So these Monday through Friday episodes of AM Excellence, I'm reading grown-up books. I'm reading books that are helping me reach my goals, be the person I strive to be, and will help you reach your goals and be the person you strive to be. But on Tuesdays at 4 p.m. comes out, releases, is published, AMX Kids. This is the 18th week I've done AMX Kids, where essentially the format is the same idea, except I'm reading a kid's book. And I'm extracting life lessons from those kids' books. They're a little bit longer, 15 to 20 minutes long. But these episodes, these books, trust me, if you were anything like me when I was young, when Where the Red Fern Grows or Hatchet or My Side of the Mountain or any of these youth books, The Outsiders, I didn't want to read them. I was a kid. I didn't realize that they were full of life lessons. Now, as an adult, when I look back, I'm reading these books thinking, oh my gosh, the truth, which we'll later talk about with Mr. Rogers, the truth is in these books. And then I realized, whoa, that's the point of these books, is to teach these life lessons. So whether you're a youngster, put it this way, whether you are a youngster or you have a youngster, these episodes, these Tuesday AMX Kids episodes are extremely valuable. I'm currently reading Where the Red Fern Grows. Where the Red Fern Grows. It's adventure, it's discovery, it's wander. It's about a boy and his dogs. Who doesn't love the story of a boy and his dogs? And what I realize is this. I'm creating these episodes for kids. I'm talking to kids. But as I'm talking to kids, I feel this aliveness and this enthusiasm and this energy passing through me. And I realize it's because of that feeling of nostalgia. It's because it's bringing me back to my youth. It's bringing me back to all the goodness and all the discovery and all the wonder and all the adventure and all the purity that exists as a kid. And it's bringing me back to the confusion even as a kid. And then you realize, whoa, the confusion that I felt then isn't too far off from the confusion that I feel now. And it's just this cycle and connection of feeling and enthusiasm and energy and passion that I absolutely love. I hope your youngsters listen to it. I sincerely do. But even if they don't, you should listen to it, because I guarantee you, the Spaniard guarantee that you will enjoy it. AMX Kids 18 came out on Tuesday. Every Tuesday, 4 p.m. is the new episodes. So moving on, talking about Mr. Rogers. So Fred Rogers knew himself, right? He knew himself. He knew what he wanted, and he knew what he didn't want. And he knew that commercialization of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood is something he did not want. He felt very much against advertising aimed at kids. His belief, his feeling was that they didn't know enough to know, hey, what's being sold to me and what's true. So he shied away from commercialization. But this brings up a very good point. So the author Maxwell King says this, quote, giving up significant income from more aggressive commercialization, Fred Rogers gave up something else, something he would have valued highly. So what this is saying, he was against commercialization, so he gave up significant income from that commercialization. But the author's saying Fred Rogers gave up something else, something he would have valued highly. And this is so powerful, and it brings me to another point that's so powerful. He gave up a legacy as strong and lasting as that of Sesame Street and the Muppets. Think about that. Mr. Rogers knew himself. He knew what was important to him. He was ironclad in those values: kindness, goodness, responsibility, caring, loving, creating that environment for kids. He knew that. But even so that he knew it, it also gave something else up. And that was a legacy. A legacy as lasting and powerful as that of Sesame Street and the Muppets. Because they did. And that's not saying it's right and wrong. This is what I want to say. It's not saying it's right and wrong. There are plenty of podcasters who use sponsors, ads. There are plenty of podcasters who do essentially GoFundMes or Patreons. There's a lot of different things you can do. No one is right or wrong. Only that Mr. Rogers knew who he was, what he wanted, and was willing to give up that thing that he would have thoroughly enjoyed. But it was because of his beliefs and his values. That brings me to a point that I want hit pause, write down, hit pause, cement, stamp on your forehead. So it's extremely important to know yourself, one, and understand. I don't recall which book I first got this from. I'd have to scour my notes. That success has a price, and it's always negotiable. Think about that. Success has a price, and it's always negotiable. What's that mean? So when you read this book, you really get into the life and the mind and the times and the relationships of Mr. Rogers. Read any book about anyone that's successful. And you're going to realize, oh, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. There's a cost. There is a cost involved in this success. Maybe it's severed relationships. Maybe it's no relationships. Maybe it's whatever. Unhealthy food and fun, right? The life of a professional fighter. That's one of the costs of it. But you realize that it's always negotiable. And what's that mean? That means that, okay, Mr. Rogers knows himself, stands for these things. Legacy is over here. Okay, well, how much do I want to know myself and stand by those values versus how much of a legacy do I want? There's a lot of space in between, and you can tread that space, you can travel that space, you can negotiate that space to get what you want. Maybe you give up a little bit of values for a little bit more legacy. But eventually there's going to come a point where you say, here's where I feel comfortable. And that's truly what it's about. So let's talk about, I talk a lot about health, overall health and wellness. Well, there's a price, and it's negotiable. The price of absolute total health and wellness is doing everything to a T, everything with perfection. The opposite of that is doing nothing. There's a lot of space in between where you can choose, all right, this is going to buff out. This is how many Twinkies I'm going to eat. This is how many sodas I'm going to take in. This is how many alcoholic drinks I'm going to drink. This is how much junk food, blah, blah. There's that line. It's negotiable. And ultimately, it's up to you. But if you get to the core of who you are, it's easy to figure that out. I'll put it this way. It's simple to figure that out. It's not easy, right? Because those decisions and choices are very rarely ever easy. Tying in last week's book, the book that I read before The Good Neighbor, The Dichotomy of Leadership by Jocko Willink and Leif Babbitt. And it's really funny. I'm smiling and laughing now because when I read Extreme Ownership for the second time, which is their other book, I drew a correlation between extreme ownership and the 5 love languages. And now I'm reading Mr. Rogers' book, and there's a correlation between The Dichotomy of Leadership, which is written by several Navy SEALs, and Mr. Rogers, who it's kind of, I mean, that's a dichotomy. That's a two different sides of the spectrum. But a perfect dichotomy existed in the way that Fred Rogers was raised. He was raised by a very supportive family, very, very supportive mother, supportive father, great community, his grandparents. He had a very supportive upbringing, but there was a cost to that, a dichotomy that was created. Because of that upbringing, that supportive upbringing, the author Maxwell King says this, quote, over time, their protectiveness of Fred seemed to have contributed to an insecurity and insularity that made his earliest years painful. So the author is saying that as a result of that upbringing, that support, it created in Mr. Rogers a feeling of insecurity and insularity. So you want to protect your kids, obviously, but you also need them to develop enough toughness and resilience to deal with the obstacles and challenges that are going to come their way. So there's a dichotomy that exists. You want to be supportive because you want to show the encouragement and the support they need, but you don't want to show too much, or you're not giving them a real picture and or the tools to deal with the real world. But I thought it was really neat that idea, the dichotomy of life, really, that I studied so much with the dichotomy of leadership was prevalent in this book with Mr. Rogers. But here's the thing. It all buffed out. If you look at how Mr. Rogers responded to that insecurity and insularity in his earliest years, it's a perfect example, to tie in another piece of learning, of Jack Canfield's in the success principles, E plus R equals O. Event plus response equals outcome. The event was the way he was raised and that subsequent feeling of insecurity. His response was he took to an outlet, his creativity through puppetry and through music and through acting. That was his response to it. And then the outcome was the creation of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. So it is taking those things, right, and to bring in a little bit of Stoic philosophy as well, that turning adversity into opportunity. He certainly turned that adversity into an opportunity, and we, humans, benefited as a result of it. This week's interview was with Rod Woodson, and this was a really neat one for me. It was a neat one, first and foremost, because I'm from Central Western Pennsylvania. I grew up a Steelers fan, Steelers, black and gold, through my family. I grew up listening to stories of the good old days from my dad, my uncles, and the terrible towel. You know, just the purity that is, you know, Western Pennsylvania. You know what I'm talking about. If you're from out there, you know what I'm talking about. And it was really neat because I got to sit down with Rod Woodson, who was an all-time Steeler great. But it was also cool because I was at West Point. And it was at a leadership and diversity conference. So that was awesome as well. So there were two. There was a double awesome there. But one of the things, I was scouring through Dred's awesome notes, show notes, and it was really hard for me to pick out a point because there was so much value. It's only a 22-minute episode, but there's so much value in that 22-minute episode. The thing I decided to highlight is on the relationship of talent plus hard work equaling excellence. Talent plus hard work equals excellence. Woodson says this: when you take that talent and put it with hard work, it equals excellence. I really didn't learn that until year 4 in the league. I went to the Pro Bowl as a kick returner because I was fast, right? That's his talent. I was fast. So he went to the Pro Bowl simply because he was fast. But here's where it gets good. I went to these guys at my position and went, these guys aren't better than me. And I started asking them things they would do that make them good on the field. And I'm like, wow, that's all you got to do? I took that back in the offseason and just worked my butt off. After that, I went to 7 straight Pro Bowls at corner. How awesome is that? How profound, yet how simple is that? His talent made him fast, so he went to a Pro Bowl. And then he started asking around. Here's the thing you need to do. This is what I do all the freaking time. Is you ask questions. You ask. Frankie Edgar, that's my foremost example. Frankie Edgar and Eddie Alvarez, from day one of my career, I would always ask them questions. Ask, ask, ask. That's actually another success principle of Jack Canfield. Ask, ask, ask. Become an ask hole. Write that one down. Become an ask hole. That's from Success Principles with Canfield. But that's what he did. He started observing, hey, you're not much better than me. What did you do? What'd you do? So when I saw Frankie Edgar signed to the UFC, I said to myself, oh, wait, he was a wrestler just like me. Maybe I could do that. And then I attached myself to him and watched and asked and replicated what he did. Obviously, his results were a little bit better than my results. But still, it is that idea of just asking, right? Become an ask hole. Do it with sincerity. Do it with authenticity, but do it. And the takeaway from that segment on my show that I took is there's really no secret to success. And I have that secret on the What I Learned This Week document, that quote, I have it in quotes, secret. There is no secret. The secret was, hey, you're really good. What do you do? Well, I lift weights this way. I eat this. I do these agility movements. I train catching with this guy. Oh, okay, then I'll go do it. It's no secret. It's spelled out. They'll spell it out for you. Look, I love talking the things that I'm into. Someone wants to know how to do a podcast, I want to teach it. Someone wants to know how to write a book, I want to teach it. Someone wants to know how to fight, I want to teach it. Someone wants to know how to train, I want to teach it. But here's the thing, you've got to show me that you're serious about it. I'm not just going to devote my time right away to every Tom, Dick, and Harry that just says I want it, because the truth is you don't really want it. You want to make yourself feel good by saying I want it, or maybe you think you want to. When you realize the hard work that's involved, then you're not going to want to do it. So you ask those people, you show them that you're true, you're honest, you're going to do the work. 9 chances out of 10, they're going to help you. And my friend and Top Gun pilot and partner of who works with Jocko and Leif, he said, look, dude, just ask me anything you want to ask me. The worst I'm going to say is no. There you go, folks. Ask it in a respectful way. The worst they're going to say is no. Okay, let's move on to the last point then. Fred, Mr. Rogers chose to deal with his feelings and insecurities rather than push them aside. It's a lot easier to push things aside, folks. It's So much you don't got to deal with anything. But when Mr. Rogers was young, he was bullied. And he said the older people in his life said, just ignore it. They pretend like you don't care and they won't do it. And he said, but I did care. That was the problem. I did care. I didn't want to just I didn't want to just push it aside because I cared. It hit me right in the heart. Just like all the negative smack talk on social media. If you're human, there's a good chance it touches your heart. I know it touches my heart. But Mr. Rogers said this, in the fact that all of that led to deep introspection. He says this, quote, the essential, and by essential, reading into that, I'm assuming he means the essential in life. The essential is to be found in depth and introspection, in searching for meaning, and then finding the truth that comes from that meaning. I'm going to read that again because it's a very profound statement. The essential is to be found in depth and introspection, in searching for meaning, and then finding the truth that comes from that meaning. To me, everything is a life lesson. Everything. Every single thing is a life lesson. And it's up to us to find that meaning, the meaning of that lesson, and then the truth of that meaning. It's not easy at all because it's not fun dealing with difficult situations, difficult conversations, difficult training routines and sessions. It's not easy. But the essential lies in that deep introspection. So let's get deep, folks. Search for meaning and then the truth. This has been What I Learned This Week, number 84. I sincerely hope you appreciate and enjoy this episode. You can get this, what I just wrote down this morning and then created this episode off of, at charliespaniard.com/blog. No longer have to be part of the reading list for that. Quick reminder that there is a new book in the works. I don't know, I'll say within 6 months. I'm just throwing that out there. A reminder to subscribe to The Spaniard Show. Search us out, Spaniard Show, on iTunes or whatever podcast app you use, and it will be there. Subscribe, tell a friend, bring a friend. Every Monday through Friday, AMX, 8 minutes. That's it. Don't give me the I don't have time. Look, I get up at 5:10, and by the time I'm downstairs, sitting on the couch, giving myself a pep talk to go train, it's 5:10. Or 5:20. That's 10 minutes. You've got 8 minutes, folks. You just got to make the decision. And if you want to tune into the live streams, facebook.com/CharlieSpaniard. Interact on social media at CharlieSpaniard. That's it, folks. Have yourselves a great weekend. See ya. Whew. Boy, that was a rich one. Whew. That was a rich one. Dang. That was good. That was good. That was real good. Hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to sign off, upload, and then I'll be back in a couple minutes for Spaniard's weekly workouts. See ya.